Teachers of Reddit, what is the funniest thing that one of your students have gotten in trouble for where you had to pretend to be mad? My absolute favorite line heard from the teacher in the neighboring grade 4 class was, "Jimmy, no more tongue tag. You tag with your hands." I used to work with students in special education. Admittedly, my favorite student ever was a sassy little girl with Down syndrome. I don't remember what I said, but she stared at me with this perplexed face and called me retarded. It was hilarious. Of course I had to tell her that it was inappropriate. I genuinely miss that girl. Edit. Teachers can't spell or use proper grammar. I used to teach special ed in an autism classroom at an elementary school. One of my 4th grade students had just learned to swear after watching a bunch of YouTube videos at home unsupervised. He did it for attention, so our classroom protocol was to completely ignore it. One day, he was pissed because his mom sent him grape soda instead of cherry soda. He was at the snack table going on a long rant of "I ducking hate this soda. My ducking mom sent me this ducking soda and it's ducking disgusting." Me and my teaching assistants all left him at the table and ignored him. When it was recess time, one of the recess teachers came into the room and announced it's time for recess. His response was, "No, it's time to duck." I had to leave the room because I was trying so hard not to laugh. Few weeks later, same kid was eating his lunch. We were all having a conversation about our favorite foods, and I asked him, "Do you like Thai food?" He looked up at me, gave me a sweet smile, and said, "I love Thai food, you cunt." He had no idea what it meant. He'd seen it on YouTube again and wanted to see what kind of reaction he'd get by using his new word again. I had to leave because I was laughing so hard. Good times. Edit. Wow. Thanks for the gold. I love how the first time I've been gilded is for a story about being called a cunt. Also, some people left great comments asking about the ethics of this ignoring technique. To these people, thank you so much for looking out for the treatment of these kids. Part of the reason I left teaching was because I felt that behavioral interventions like this were often overused and could be very disrespectful and dehumanizing to the students. Just because a child has autism doesn't mean he deserves to be consistently treated like a lab rat. That being said, there are some situations where behavioral interventions are the most effective and most respectful of kids in the long term. Some kids on the spectrum can't differentiate between positive and negative attention. They are highly motivated by any adult attention, no matter what type. Kids who are this desperate for attention need to be explicitly taught that there are more effective ways of getting attention than swearing. The swearing is the only behavior that my staff would ignore, and we would make an effort to suppress any emotional reactions we may have about his language. Some kids with autism feed into an adult's emotional reactions. They find it very rewarding when swearing elicits a shocked response from an adult, thus increasing the behavior both with us and with classmates, teachers, and other parents, causing the kid further negative social consequences. Ignoring him caused him to first ramp up his swearing in an attempt to get our attention, but he eventually realized he wouldn't get a reaction from us and calmed down on his language. Another key component of these types of interventions is having a strong positive relationship with the child. I used the 1:5 ratio rule, where for every negative behavior I had to address, either through ignoring or timeouts, I would find 5 positive behaviors that I could also address with extra attention and rewards. Conforming to school behavior expectations all day is really hard for kids on the spectrum, and it's important to acknowledge all of the ways they manage to hold themselves together in an environment that isn't always autism friendly. Acknowledging kids' strengths and teaching them alternative outlets to vent their frustrations, other than swearing and throwing my computers, is critical in helping them succeed at school. Sorry for the long rant about behavioral based interventions. Again, I really appreciate those of you who spoke up and asked about behaviorism in schools. You're absolutely right, and part of the reason I switched to mental health counseling was to get away from this mentality. I was working at a daycare. As I was walking in, a little girl, Jillian, was being dropped off. There was a group of teenagers outside who screamed, "You can suck my fat D." The owner of the daycare, who was supposed to be in every day but only came every few months, was really sour. She liked chicks, not kids. She was showing some parents around and tried to assert how in control she was by arbitrarily picking on Jillian, who was playing quietly by herself. She said, "Now Jillian, you have to put that toy down right now and go play with something else." To which Jillian logically asked, "But why?" She said, "I don't appreciate you talking back. You can go sit in the corner until you're ready to behave. Thank you." Jillian proudly responded as she walked towards the corner. "Okay. Well, you can suck my fat D. Thank you." Edit. My first Reddit gold. Thank you, kind stranger. I really needed a boost today, and this was that and then some. We had a group of 8th grade boys smoking Twix in the bathroom. No, this is not a code for a drug. The actual candy bar. 5th grade. A kid called a girl a string of anal beads in front of the whole class. Sent him to the office. He denied it. The principal called me in. I had to turn around to not let him see me laugh as the principal went on a tirade about how she never got the urge to call people anal beads. Best part. Both the principal and assistant principal claimed to not know what anal beads were. Both women in their 40s. So they did a Google image search on the school computer. Got a confused call from IT. Seniors brought a George Foreman grill to class to grill some burgers during a testing day for which many were exempt. At about noon, nearly the entire 3 hallways around their room smelled amazing. Students were disciplined, but it was funny as it. I dealt with K1S to this summer. There were these 2 kids, Logan and Emma, who were decently friends. One day during aftercare I come across Emma full on making out with a tree. Me, Emma. "What are you doing?" Emma. "Me and Logan are pretending my boyfriend is the tree. It's not a very good boyfriend, we are done now." So that was that. I was a teaching assistant in this preschool. It was in Singapore, and the education system there can be really strict. So when kids are cleaning up, the school insists they sing this clean up song. Just keeps going, "Everybody clean up, clean up, clean up." I know the initial reasoning is to make cleaning up fun, but the teachers just made it mandatory. Anyway, one kid got into trouble for cleaning up without singing. Being 2, of course she kept asking, "Why? But I'm cleaning." When the teachers told her she had to sing, they couldn't give her an explanation. Beside, "Because I said so." In response, she clamped her mouth shut. They sent her out as punishment and I had to go with her, and it was so hard to maintain a serious expression until we left the classroom. Once we're alone, I told her grown-ups can be dumb and it's okay to ask questions. I still wonder how she's doing. She was a really smart kid and understood me when I explained some grown-ups don't like kids talking back to them. So sometimes, it's okay to pretend you agree just to keep them happy as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. My girlfriend works at a daycare, and one day a little boy was finger painting, casually stops to look at his hands, and goes, "Now how the duck do I get this off?" In Australia we have mandatory standardized testing called the NAPLAN. One of my students was very against doing this. His solution: eat the test paper. We all sat and watched him grab the booklet and eat the whole thing. I then had to march him to the principal and had him explain why he couldn't do the test. I had to walk away because it was so funny. He didn't have to do the test in the end and just sat with me the whole time being damn proud of himself. I noticed 2 of my students were giggling and corpsing a whole bunch during class. I walked over and they both instantly closed their notebooks. I flipped at how their notebooks after class and found that one page from each of their notebooks was full of D drawings in increasing levels of explicitness and ridiculousness. There was one where a D cowboy was riding a D horse. I quickly stifled a chuckle with a cough and told them that this was highly inappropriate. Shooed them out of the classroom, and had a good laugh for a solid minute. Edit. No joke. All you grown men and women sharing stories about how you spent your childhood drawing Ds in school has brought great joy to my hungover self. Please keep them coming. Student teaching doing a unit on volume with 6th graders. We made origami boxes and then measured its volume. One student drew D's inside the box and wrote what's in the box on the outside and handed it to her friend. We saw the friend's reaction and confiscated the box which she had crushed. It was a box of D's. All the teachers were shown the box afterwards. 2 kindergartners taking turns falling onto their backs with their knees up to their chests so that the other can't take a big whiff of their butt and scream you back and forth like a seesaw. A grade 5 boy called a girl a cat and would meow every time she tried to speak. I had to send him out for being disruptive. One of my students, 4th grade, said FCK in class. When I asked him about it, he explained very nonchalantly that another student had asked him what the F word was, so he told her. He was very calm and rational about the whole thing. I had a hard time keeping a straight face while reminding him not to talk like that at school. My teacher Mr. Rideout in middle school called my mom after school one day. We were taking a test and it was dead silent in the room, and I, being a class clown when I was younger, raised my hand and asked, "Mr. Rideout, what shampoo do you use?" He's bald. He has not one piece of hair on his head. He told my mom he thought it was hilarious and he only called her to laugh with her about it. I still got grounded. Back in primary school, a mate of mine was having a little fight with a black dude in my class. He told the black guy to shut up or I'll give you a white eye. I piss myself every time I think of that. I recently started a program teaching English overseas, and the students in 5th grade know an adequate amount for a town where nobody's parents know English. First day, I sit and observe a class, and one kid turns to me and asks me your standard set of questions using all of his English. Ronaldo or Messi? You play Xbox? What's your Instagram name? You like licking pussy? He's 10 years old. I teach high school history, and a few years back I had a situation in which students were presenting PowerPoints they created to argue which ancient civilization was more successful, India or China. They worked in partner groups, sharing responsibility on researching different aspects and completing the presentation. In some cases they would put placeholder text to let them know to return to that topic and replace it with researched information. One pair of students, who have always been polite and hardworking, made a pretty serious editing error before presenting to our class of 26. They were speaking knowledgeably and intelligently about ancient China until their slide on the Han Dynasty. The top bullet note simply said, "Emperor Wudi conquered Summit." The look of abject horror in their eyes as they turned to the screen was priceless. All the color drained from their faces in the midst of uproarious laughter from the class. I needed to remain professional, but biting my lip proved to be an ineffective method of stopping my own laughter. They immediately began to blame each other for the oversight. I told them to relax and be more diligent in their proofreading next time. Going to catch hell from animal rights activists. But this was years ago when an HS. Anyway, couple of guys got their hands on a young falcon. Not gonna go into how, while at boarding school. Didn't have a roommate but did have the key to the extra locker that never got checked during daily room inspection. So, that's where one guy sometimes kept her until he got word to report to his section supervisor at the end of classes one day. The supervisor said he decided to check the extra lockers that morning. Found himself face to beak with a hooded falcon perched on the hanger dowel, and just closed it back up without telling anyone. Supervisor tried to keep a straight face. Said this was serious. Guy should get hammered with demerits. But it was the coolest contraband he'd ever found. No write-up. Just said to get rid of it. She was released where she could establish her own territory, and she did. Edit. Para. For description improvement. I heard a student cursing in the hallway. I told him to watch his language in school. He said, "Well, I'm so ducking sorry," and I had to hold in a laugh. English teacher at a Japanese girls' school caught one student drawing a huge, glistening cock on her desk. I was actually quite impressed. It was this magnificent, throbbing member, veiny and proud. It must have taken a fair amount of artistic talent and experience. I said to her, "Rub it out, now." Didn't realize what I had said until I had turned my back and walked away. It was a struggle not to burst out laughing for the rest of the lesson. 2 girls 1 cup. Nearly every screen in the building. I'd worked out how to use our remote software to display things. Teacher left machine and room unlocked one lunch. The mortified look on people's faces was amazing. All the 1st graders were lined up in the hall sitting down in rows waiting on something. I heard a shocked whisper from a little girl exclaim, "Don't do that." She was talking to a boy and he said, "Why?" To which the little girl replied, "That means you hate God. WTF. Anyways, the boy had the same reaction as me because without hesitation it was revealed to me what the action was as he shrugged his shoulders and stuck both his middle fingers in the air and was just rotating his body so that he was flipping everyone off in the vicinity. His parents were called in to have a discussion about it and everything. Also, I'm not a teacher. I was the little boy. I didn't know what flipping the bird was. But I found out in first grade that it didn't mean you hated God. But it was still a no. Just this week. Finger through the zipper look at my wiener 5th grade girl. Writing my name on the wall in Sharpie. Taking cool as duck paper airplanes. And it's only Tuesday. I work in daycare. Many years ago I looked after a little boy who was as mischievous as hell. Most days he had me in uncontrollable fits of laughter. A black guy walked into our room one day. Can't remember if he was a potential client or maintenance man. But anyway, in Australia we don't see a lot of black people around, and Mr. Mischievous took one look at him and casually said, "Hello black." TLDR. 2-year-olds are racist. No one got in trouble, but sometimes they said horrifically awkward things. Student number 1, F. I'm the only black student in this class right now. Me? What about student number 2, M? Hello. He's sitting right there. Student number 1, Osnor. No. He don't count. Have you heard him talk? Other students? How we literally had this conversation at lunch. Pretending to be a robotic student number 2. Osa hello. Would you like to come to my home for dinner this evening? Student number 2. Laughing. It's true. They called me an Oreo while I was eating Oreos. Me. Can we please do work now and stop being culturally insensitive? Not a teacher, but one of my classmates was suspended for 2 days because he brought a Christmas tree in our classroom to make it more festive. I was teaching simple summary to my 6th grade class. The formula is somebody, name, wanted, what, but, got in the way, then, solve the issue. So, conclusion. Me, the main character wanted what? Student, D's nuts. Include hand gesture. Me, that is highly inappropriate. That's a write-up. Go to the office. Student, how did you hear me? I thought I was whispering. Then I had to write the exact nature of what he said on the write-up slip. And the whole office including myself had a great laugh. They wouldn't have gotten in trouble, but it was disrespectful. There was an older sub in the building. I'm talking early 80s. The students I was working with were filling balloons for graduation. They told me they wanted to give them to the sub so that he could be the old man from Up. It's probably funnier if you know everyone. But I did need to excuse myself. I teach EFL in a school in Korea. I had one kid in 2nd grade whose parents let him watch way too many adult movies, and he knew a bunch of curse words despite not knowing how bad they were. One day, he drops a pencil and says crap. I glance at him, but no one else knows what it is, so besides an annoyed look, I don't make a big deal. He bends over to pick it up and smacks his head on the table. Damn it. I give him the spiel on how he shouldn't be saying those words, and by now, everyone is curious what those words mean. He very innocently replies, "Sorry teacher, that just really duckin' hurt." I had to contain my laughter as I again lectured him about his language. Definitely the kindergartners we caught trying to dig under the fence. The language arts teacher told us by coming into the faculty room and announcing, "Prisoners are escaping." Or the 2 kindergartners who got in a gogurt fight and then insisted they hadn't, even though they were both covered head to toe in strawberry yogurt. A few years ago, when I was teaching trumpet lessons at a music store, I had a very difficult student. She would argue with me for the duration of a lesson about how I was wrong to force structured musical instruction upon her, and how music was about blah blah blah. Ethereal BS that just goes in circles logically. Mind you, I wasn't forcing her to be there. Her parents were paying the bill. Her lesson happened on a given day, and she proceeded to yell at me for the entire half hour. When the session came to a close, we'd gone over some stuff, but we really didn't accomplish anything. I diligently marked the material in her book, and while opening the door for her to leave, explained how to go about practicing it. She walked out of the room, visibly angry with me, knocking her case into all sorts of stuff in the waiting room while adamantly marching for the exit. In the process, she bumped into my next student, and didn't acknowledge him, or the other instructors, and needless to say, my next student noticed this. The teachers just kept their mouths shut, but my next student opened his mouth in front of everyone to say, what the duck was her problem? We all laughed at the obvious questioning coming out of this 13-year-old boy's mouth. Really, none of us were pissed off. I think I ended up buying him something for his birthday. My dad was a school superintendent at a rural district in Minnesota. One day he walked into the gym and there was a car parked in the middle of the court. No way it could have gotten there besides it being fully assembled in the gym at night by shop students. He thought it was brilliant. Everybody else was royally pissed and called for punishment. I don't remember what happened but do remember it was a balancing act between respect for the kid's prank and disciplinarian. I was subbing middle school science. The teacher didn't leave any work, so I started up some Bill Nye the Science Guy episodes. I wasn't paying attention to the video, but suddenly one kid stood up and yelled "That's Illuminati." After I muffled my laughter, I told him to sit back down and be quiet, but it was still hilarious. I am a teacher, but this happened when I was a student. At my high school we had a Middle Eastern kid who probably had Asperger's. He constantly talked about hating America, hating the Midwest, hating white people, and wanting to bomb them all. He never seemed to get in trouble, probably because the school was afraid of coming off as racist. He got along with one of the science teachers because instead of yelling at him she just let him go on. But this usually happened outside of class, like after school or during lunchtime he'd do this. Never in front of an entire class. One day he just ran into our science class, no idea where he came from, and said, "Everyone, I need to show you something." Our teacher just kind of stared at him and let him go on. He started singing "Hungry Like the Wolf" and also had a dance to go with it. He kept going for a bit and then our science teacher said to him that he was being inappropriate right now and he can't just leave his class and interrupt another. He said alright and left. Soon as he left and was down the hall, our teacher burst out laughing and so did the rest of us. I work in Korea and teach students at a variety of levels. Over here, the universal symbol of the bird flip is known quite simply as duck. One day, I was writing something on the board. A boy behind me flips one of the girls off. I didn't see this, but what I did hear was a scream out a second later, "Teacher, he's ducking me." I teach ESL in Taiwan. We have a cooking class and the students are around 9-10 years old. I was teaching different baking vocabulary, and one word was whisk, and I asked the students to come up with their own sentence for whisk. One kid raises his hand and answers, "My dad loves to drink whiskey." I had to stop myself from bursting out laughing. I teach high school English. This was a class of sophomores. Unfortunately this was the one day I had a sub, so I just knew of this through the notes. One kid had a balloon full of helium from a science class or something and kept squeaking it. He was also constantly bugging one of the girls he knows has a short temper. Out of nowhere, the girl stands up and comes to his desk, bites the balloon so the helium is coming out. Then, in her helium affected voice, says, "Stop talking to me, you itch," and the whole class loses it. I tried to be upset with her the next day for disrupting the class and making the sub deal with it, but she said, "Miss B, you know you would have laughed too," and honestly, yeah, so I'll let that slide. Edit. Holy wow, thank you for my first gold, Anon.